This is going to be the ultimate guide to contact point adjustment. Get it? Guide, ultimate guide? Yuck, 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 yuck. Eesh, tough crowd. Hey folks, we are back with another video, and today we are going to go over SRAM Contact Point Adjustment in detail. So recently I had published a video on Shimano Free Stroke, how it works, exactly what it does, and also went into the mechanisms inside to show you guys how it works in order so we could put some myths to bed. And the goal with this video is to do the exact same thing, except I'm not going to do a bleed at the end because, well, I've already done a bleed. I have a video out there for a full bleed for a guide break, right? So in this case, a guide ultimate. But in this video, what we're going to do is go over exactly how this thing works, right? What happens to the handle, how to adjust it, what you need to worry about when adjusting it, which is actually very little. It's actually better a solution overall, in my opinion, than the Free Stroke is, the way everything works in here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to open up the handle, show you exactly the mechanisms that make it work, right? At the same time, I could show you how to replace a piston, because the nice thing about SRAM, unlike Shimano, is that SRAM sells all these parts inside a brake handle. It's great. You want to go buy a piston, you go buy a piston. You want to go buy parts that break, you want a broken lever, or you want to replace a broken lever or other mechanisms, you could do it. And it's not all that bad priced as opposed to Shimano, right? Shimano, one, they don't offer most parts, if any, on some of their brakes. And God, they don't even offer pistons for their calipers, for crying out loud, whereas SRAM does. So I got to give SRAM credit on that one, okay? This one here has a metal piston in it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So with all that being said, let's go into the tools needed to open this thing up, if you decide to do that in the future. But ultimately, again, this video is going to be about how contact point adjustment works on SRAM brakes. All right. In order to open up the lever, we're going to need actually quite a bit of tools just for a lever, right? But the most important tool here, actually there's two super important tools for this job. Important tool number one, safety glasses. We're dealing with dot fluid here. You do not want to get dot fluid in your eyes. That is very, very bad. Two, gloves. You absolutely want to get gloves. Dot fluid is pretty nasty stuff. When it sits on something, it'll start corroding it. It'll start eating your skin. So you definitely want to wear gloves, because we're going to be opening up a lever. Dot fluid is going to come out of it, right? So make sure you have your glasses and make sure you wear gloves, okay? So from there, we're going to need an 8mm. It doesn't have to be a flared, but if you have a flared wrench, even better, right? So an 8mm wrench in order to separate the cable from the actual lever, right? You need a T25 in order to separate the cable handlebar mount from the lever. Then we're going to need a T10 and a T8 in order to remove some screws to start getting inside the actual lever. Now I use a magnet because there is a little spring and a little ball, like a bearing ball, a detent ball, what they call. And I just use a magnet to pull it out and actually to keep it safe in a spot, right? While we do the rest of the job this way, I won't have to worry about losing the ball in the spring, right? Now, this is a custom tool from SRAM. You will absolutely need this tool. Don't try, this is real cheap. I mean, you can pick them up for like $5, if not less. Do not try and remove anything on the inside, piston, sleeve, so on and so forth. Without this tool, you'll do more damage than good, okay? Can it be done? It can, but you're way better off just taking a few bucks, buying this tool and doing it right, okay? Super important. A pick, the only reason we need a pick is to put some seals back into place, or actually bushings back into place, some rubber bushings. We're going to need a 4mm and a 2mm Allen, an 8mm crow's foot to torque the nut back down to from the cable to the lever. You might need a long nose plier to try and insert something inside the handle. We'll get to that. It might not be needed. We might be able to do it without the plier, right? We're going to need a torque wrench, Loctite blue, right? Brake fluid. Not that we're doing a bleed over here. We're not doing a bleed whatsoever, but we want to dip the piston in in dot fluid before we put it back into the lever, right? I'm going to show you guys how to remove the piston in this thing too. Alcohol and paper towels. That is pretty much it. But again, make sure you wear your safety glasses and make sure you got rubber gloves on. All right. First, let's talk about how to adjust the contact point adjuster, as well as what happens with the lever when you adjust the contact point adjuster. So before you do anything, the most important thing is to figure out your comfortable distance for the lever for your hand. All right, you have to figure that out first because that makes a difference. Okay, although SRAM is different than Shimano, this is still the most important part. Okay, you have to figure out what lever position and distance that the lever will be from the bar first. From there, we can go into our contact point adjuster. All right, so the contact point adjuster is a dial. Okay, and on the side over here there is an arrow represented right here. Okay, that arrow is backed out, the beginning of the arrow, and let's say all the way in at the tip of the arrow. Okay, so right now it's all the way backed out. So in other words, it's at the beginning point of the arrow. Okay, so as you notice, this line over here is my comfort position for my lever. Okay, so right now with the contact point adjuster all the way backed out, if I put pressure down, that's pretty much as far as I could take that lever, okay, on that first line. Now let's adjust it. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to roll it in. Now if you notice, a huge difference between SRAM's contact point adjustment and Shimano's Free Stroke. When I adjust the contact point adjustment, the lever does not move, unlike Shimano. The lever moves for Shimano, and that's why it's so important to place or at least put the lever back to the original position on the Shimanos, or else you're doing nothing. So over here now, I'm just dialing in, and I'm going to go all the way to the end. So right now I just reached the end, all right? So now when I press the lever, look how much lower it goes. In fact, it touches the bar, okay? So essentially, when you dial the contact point adjuster all the way in, you are giving yourself more stroke on the brake, on your brakes. In other words, it'll take more time or more distance for the pads to actually make full contact with the brakes. There's advantages to doing this. Essentially, it adds to modulation, right? In other words, you have a little bit more feathering capability on your brakes, okay? So if you don't want your brakes to lock real hard, real quick, then yeah, adjust the contact point adjuster all the way in, and it'll just give you more options as far as using your brakes in trails, okay? But if you like them with a little bit more grip to them, then you just roll it back out. It's always stiffer rolling it out for some reason. I have no idea why. Okay, we roll it back out all the way to the beginning, which I'm not there yet. Am I? Nope, a little bit more. Okay. It's also a lot more adjustment than Shimano, what Shimano offers. Okay, as far as range. Nearly there. Come on. All right, so that's the end. So again, now it gets stiffer, right? In other words, I don't have to throw the lever as much in order to get my brakes to lock, okay? So that's what it does. But the big difference again, with the SRAM design, the lever doesn't actually move when you adjust your contact point adjuster. With Shimano, it does. So with Shimano, you absolutely have to go back to that comfort zone, that comfort line basically, right? Or that comfort point. With Shimano, you don't have to, with SRAM, you do not have to worry about that. Okay, so next, let's get into whether or how much the actual pistons move when we adjust the contact point adjuster. So now we're gonna see if the pistons actually move. So I took the front brake off, put it on a handlebar on the vise, and in the caliper, I put the bleed block for the ultimate brake, the guide ultimate brake, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the bleed block. Okay, I want to get as even as possible separation. Now I'm assuming as I take it out, some pressure in the system is going to squeeze the piston. I do not expect them to be equal to each other, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure best I can here. This is a little bit tricky, really. Let's take a couple of measurements, see if I get a flat spot. Okay, I'm getting around the same measurement on the piston edges. Let's try this side again. Let's try the top part. So let's say, depending on where I grab a measurement from, I'm between 11.44 millimeters and 11.42, 11.46. It's a little hard actually to get accurate measurement in here when I don't have full reach too. It's hard to tell when everything's flat. So 11.48. So I'm between, let's say, 11.40 and 11.45, right? Let's try the back piston. So we'll call this piston 1, this piston 2. Piston 2, ooh, that's a lot less. That's 11.10 for both sides. 11.14, but I don't think I'm even there. Yep. So I would say $11.43. So let's say around 11.43 and 11.10. Okay. So now, again, the arrow represents the contact point adjuster. Right now we are backed out, so we are here. So now I'm going to spin it all the way in. Okay. When you're facing this way, it's counterclockwise. So let's dial this all the way in. Now remember, when we dial it in, we get more throw in our lever. So that tells me there's less pressure in the system. Okay, so it's all the way out. Now let's measure it. Zero it out. 11.43. 11.45. 11.11. 11.10. Well, actually it just moved, but when I was holding it, it was 11.10. I don't know if you see that well. So 11.11 right now, right? So what does that tell us? When we move, I know there's a lot of people that think that the calipers actually move. They don't. There's not enough pressure to push the calipers out, okay? When adjusting the free stroke screw for Shimano or the contact point adjuster. It's all about pressure inside the system. So we have a sleeve in here, and all we're doing is literally moving the sleeve back and forth, right? Which basically moves the piston or gives the piston a little bit more room to move back and forth, basically. So that creates either a little bit more pressure in the system or a little bit less pressure in the system. That's all it does. Hence, in return, you're going to get a little bit more throw when you have less pressure in the system. That means it's going to take longer for the pads, the caliper pistons, to push the pads and grip onto the rotor. Whereas when we have more pressure, that grip is just going to happen quicker. That's all it does. It just increases and decreases pressure within the system. That should answer that question. Whether it's free stroke or contact point adjuster, the actual calipers, the pistons in the caliper, don't move. They just don't move. But what we are doing is increasing pressure, oil pressure within the system in order to make them move quicker or slower. All right. So hopefully that answers that question as far as what both do, even though this is more for the contact point adjuster. Next, let's open up the lever so I can show you guys exactly how it works with a SRAM brake. Okay, so this is a front brake, right? It's a whole system, caliper cable, and the lever. First thing we need to do is move this rubber cover. And inside we have an 8mm nut, okay? Now, one thing I forgot to mention, what did I do with it? Oh, well, I got another one here. Oh, there it is. You are also gonna need a container of some sorts to empty out the dot fluid within the handle into, right? You do not want this falling on anything outside of a plastic container. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take an 8mm, again, wrench, could be a flared wrench like this, or just a regular wrench, and we are going to unthread this bolt. Now remember, that little bit of dot fluid is gonna come out of here at first. There we go. Now what we can do is just cycle the piston for the rest of the dot fluid to come out. Like I said, not much, but dot fluid nonetheless. Okay, still not empty. I'm sure there's a little bit more sitting inside the reservoir. That part is done, okay? Let's take a paper towel and clean everything. So we emptied out the majority of the oil. Now, let's open up the lever. First things first, we are going to take out the screws for the reservoir body, and we are going to start with the screw closest to the lever, all right? T10 Torx bit. So we're going to take this guy out, leave him on the side. Then we're going to grab our magnet. Boom. See what I mean? We have a small spring, and we have a detent ball. Okay, and we're going to take this guy and we're going to put him on the side where he's nice and safe away from everything. Now we can take the other screw out. Oops, like I said, actually I forgot to mention, put a rag underneath, so because oil will come out basically out of the reservoir. So a rag will catch it. Okay. There we go. Put these guys on the side. Take out the reservoir. See what I mean? Quite a bit of oil in there. So grab our little cup. There we go. That's the remainder of the oil. Done. This guy on the table. Let him soak him up in here. Immediately put some alcohol on it and wipe it off. Because as I mentioned, that fluid, nasty stuff. Okay, so let's leave the reservoir and the screws on the side. Okay, next up, let's work on the lever. To remove the lever, we have to remove these two bolts. T10 again. All right. Those guys on the side, you got one on that side, and we have one on this side. Okay, now the whole mechanism is going to come out one shot. Now remember, we have a spring in here, okay, right there. Remember the position of the spring. It sits on the body over here, okay? So we're just going to pull that out. There's a spring. We're going to put the lever on the side. All right. Next, we're going to take out that bolt on the inside that holds the axle that pushes the piston. Now we need the T8, and we are going to remove that dark bolt, that black bolt in here. So you have a chrome one, and you have a regular, a black one over here, right? The chrome one is for the axle that pushes on the piston. This black one holds. So the one closest to the mount, the handlebar mount, this holds the swing arm mechanism in place, okay? So take him, we have a screw over here. Now we have a pin And then take your 8mm, your T8, just put them in that hole that you just unscrewed and pull the whole thing out. There we go. You're going to have to just give it a little wedge out. Boom. And there is our swing arm. And this tool is absolutely needed because we have to measure the distance when we put it back in, make sure we get the right distance here, okay? So, next, let's remove the sleeve. Before we remove the sleeve, let's remove the two bushings. There's two little bushings in here. There they are. Don't lose these. Put them on the side. All right, just like that. Can you see them? Yes. Put everything in order. So before we remove the sleeve, let's clean everything down with alcohol in here real well. Okay? Because I don't want any dirt getting inside the piston shaft. Okay, just grab it. Paper towel, just go in there and clean best you can. See what I mean? Get all that stuff out of there. Because we are going to expose this piston cylinder, the brake cylinder, and we do not want dirt getting in there. And we'll still clean it out, but there we go. So now we remove the sleeve, right? So we take our tool, and on one side of the tool you'll see sort of like a cross, right? Or a star. And we need to align that with the sleeve on the inside. Okay, so we're going to take it, just spin it around until he locks in, just like that. Okay, and then we turn counterclockwise. Just keep on turning until the sleeve comes off. And we will explain to you exactly how contact point adjustment works. Yep, yes he is out. Okay. Come on, trap sideways. Why do you trap sideways? There we go. So there's our sleeve. Okay, so let's separate this for now. Now, let's take out our contact point dial. Now, when you do this, put your hand over the top as you pop this out because the piston will jettison out, right? There's a spring on it, there's pressure on it. So take this, just lift it straight up, and boom, there goes our piston. All right, and that is the internal assembly. Now, you will notice something different with mine. Yes, that is a metal piston. I converted to metal pistons on all my Ultimates or all my SRAM brakes back in 2018. I will never go back to the plastic ones. Maybe, yeah, 2017 or 2018. These things rule. It is amazing how much better overall everything works with these brakes, and I never have to worry about temperature variances because the original pistons, they swell in very hot weather. SRAM says they fixed the problem. Bull. I know people who have new brakes that have that same issue, and I tell everybody, transition to just swap out for metal pistons. You find them on Amazon, you can find them on eBay. Get a reputable brand with good reviews, and you cannot go wrong. I absolutely love these things. So, how does the contact point adjustment work? This is our sleeve. This is our barrel. This is our dial. Okay, so this sleeve touches the piston head, right? So, whenever we dial, well, get in. Come on. Why isn't it going in? Okay, he's being stubborn. Get in there. Why is it not fitting in? It's because I'm not aligned properly. It's got to be aligned on this side. There we go. That's it. Now this guy should go in. What the? What's going on? This guy should fit in just like this. There we go, just like that. And then this guy goes in just like that. All right. So basically all we're doing, literally, every time we screw the dial, we're literally just pushing this in, the sleeve in and out a bit. Okay, that's all it's doing. So it's just moving the piston, but not enough where the actual pistons on the caliper move. It's just adding a little bit more and a little bit less pressure. So when we push it in, it's a little bit more pressure. So in other words, when you see the arrow, when we bring it all the way out, it's going to put a little bit more pressure. When we bring it clockwise or counterclockwise all the way in, there's going to be less pressure because it's going to be moving out. And that's all that happens over here. That's all it does. All right, guys? So to show you guys how the contact point adjustment works when the sleeve is assembled with the piston, okay? So if you notice, when I move the dial, everything turns inside. It's a little bit hard to move the dial when it's open, actually, but there you go, right? So everything's turning. The sleeve's turning, the collar's turning, and the dial's turning, right? Piston's not turning. So I'm going to use my tool just to make it easier to bring everything to the inside, to the in position, so the beginning of the arrow, right? So there we go. I'm at the beginning of the arrow right now, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a measurement from the inside of the sleeve to the top part of the body here, all right? I need a new battery for this thing. So let's go around here. Let's put it to the inside of the sleeve. And let's try and measure it to the top part of the body. So right there. So let's say we're 43.47, 48, give or take. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is emulate bringing out the dial. So in other words, I'm going to basically turn it towards the arrow. Okay. I'm going to do about 3 full turns. 1, 2, 3. Okay, give or take. Now, my guess by doing this is I'm going to have a little bit more room on this side and a little bit less room on this side. Let's measure it. So we were at, what did I say, 43 point something. So already right off the bat, I'll tell you, come on. There we go. So let's put it in. Bring it down to the top. Boom, 41.6, for instance, right? So again, all it does is move that black sleeve up and down, or in and out, okay? So when we dial this thing in towards the arrow, it brings the sleeve in this way, meaning there's a little bit more room in the piston this way. If we dial it in towards the beginning of the arrow, it brings the sleeve towards the piston, creating less room in here and more room in here. Now, the nice thing is that the way SRAM designed it is that as you're adjusting this, it doesn't actually, you would think it would affect the lever, but it doesn't, because the lever is built essentially to absorb that difference, okay, without changing the lever distance from the handlebar. Whereas with Free Stroke, one's connected to the other one. You can't do anything about it. All right, so hopefully that explains how that works. Now, I'm sure there's going to be questions as far as, all right, that's great, but how do I bleed this thing now? Do I bleed it with the contact point adjuster all the way in on the beginning of the arrow, or at the end of the arrow where the pointy side is, right? SRAM wants us to bleed with the contact point adjuster at the beginning of the arrow. My guess is the reason is if we start with the contact point adjuster at the end of the arrow, again, that's going to create a little bit more room on the piston side. In doing so, if you decide to go back to the beginning of the arrow, it could be quite possible that there'll be just a little bit too much pressure in the system, and ultimately you might run into issues with brake pads rubbing against your rotors, all right? And it would be hard to get rid of it due to the added pressure. So that is just a guess. For me, it makes sense. Remarkably, I've never actually tested it. I've only bled SRAM brakes the way they recommended, with the contact point at the beginning of the arrow, or the contact point adjuster at the beginning of the arrow. Now, it could also be possible that it might have to do with the swing link, right? As far as if we bring the contact point adjuster to the tip of the arrow or the end of the arrow over here, again, it's going to bring out the sleeve. I don't know if that would interfere in any single which way or form if we start there. I don't think it would, but it's quite possible. I don't know. All right. So, but ultimately, again, SRAM wants us to bleed at the beginning of the arrow, and I would just do what they recommend from that perspective. Or if you want, you could try it the other way. It might make the break much harder. I don't know. That's something that I would have to try one day, and maybe I will try it now. Or you could try if you wanted to see if you like the feel of that better. All right. So hopefully that answers that question as well. So to put it back together, first thing we want to do is rinse it out with some alcohol. Rinse the cylinder real well, just in case dirt got in there, right? Don't be afraid. All that dirt, all those little particles could have gone on the inside. Oh. Now, let this just air out, because it's going to be real difficult to put a cloth in there. Okay, we're going to let this air out for a little bit. So what we can do to try and clean the threads, at least to make sure that those are clean, right? Grab lint-free cloth. Okay, just wrap it like this and put it inside the barrel. Grab a pick in the middle, basically, and just try and make sure it's pointing down so nothing goes in the cylinder, and just keep on spinning it. Again, we don't need to go past here because the threads are up here, right? Oops, the threads are up here. So we just keep on spinning this just to make sure the threads are clean. And I mean the threads that this thing's threading into. All right, see what I mean? Let's do that one more time. Put this in there. We don't need to go too deep over here. Make sure that we're pointing down this way, right? And basically just wrap them around in the threads. All right. Now let's spray alcohol in them one more time from the top down. Just let them drip out. And we will let him dry out, let the alcohol evaporate, and then we assemble everything back together. Let's put them back together. First, we need to put the piston and the spring inside. To do that, we need to dunk the piston in some dot fluid. All right, in order to get the seals. Well, not exactly what I wanted. Remember, wear gloves, okay? So now, we're gonna take our piston, spring first, and we're gonna put it right into the cylinder and let it fall in there. All right. Next, we're gonna put in our dial. Now, to put in our dial, we're gonna need our tool. So on the bottom part of the tool, you're gonna see this little, sort of like a half moon, right? We need to insert that half moon to face upwards, okay? And basically, we're gonna push the piston down, and then you'll notice you will have space over here, okay? That's where we're gonna take our dial, and we're gonna put it in. And what we're gonna do is pull out our tool and slip in our dial. And our dial is in. All right. Next, we put in our sleeve and collar, right? So again, now if you notice, there's two notches on the dial. Those two notches have to line up with these two notches here, okay? So try and guess best you can to make it easier. Move it around and they will sink in. You will feel it sink in. Do not try, there we go. See, it sunk in basically. You heard a click. Now we take this and we screw it all the way in. Again, all the way in is to the beginning of the arrow, right? So now, once it goes all the way in, turn it out a little bit to loosen it. We don't want this thing in there super tight because they don't give you a lot of grip over here. And if you put it all the way in, you'll never be able to unlock it. You're gonna need pliers for that, right? So that is in. Next, we put in our bushings. As for the bushings, let's give them a bit of a clean. Chances are they're dirty. Okay. 1 and 2. Now these things are a bit of a pain in the butt. We need them in there, but they never stick. So what I do is I grab just a little bit of grease, and I mean just a little bit, and I put it underneath the head right in, or the lip right over here, okay? Just a little bit of grease on each one. The grease will help it stick in order for us to put in the swing arm without popping out the bushings, putting it when we put in the swing arm, right? Now, these things go here in these holes, and they're a little bit tricky to get in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our pick. Maybe if I do it with this guy here, there we go, that makes sense. I don't know why I thought about this first. So basically, well, I still can't do it technically, but it's going to be a little bit easier. Grab a pick, put them in a hole, right? And the grease should let them stick just like that. Hey, that worked out pretty good. Hopefully you guys saw that. Now we grab the other one and we do the same thing. All right, now we need to install the swing arm. We need the tool again. So take the cross part of the tool, point it to your left. Make sure that this seat is exposed. All these seats are exposed upwards, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to, excuse me, we're going to take our swing arm. We're going to place it in just like that, okay? Just the way you see it. Then we're going to grab a 2mm Allen. We're going to put it in the bolt on the bottom, and we're going to screw it in until it hits the top. All right, just like that. Now, here we need a caliper. The goal here is to measure to make sure that we are 26.3 millimeters from top to bottom, which we are. Actually, it might be a little bit too much. I gotta bring him back just a little bit. So I'm gonna take this guy and thread him in just a little bit. I threaded him in way too much. I'm going to thread him back out. There we go. Yep. I'm 26.3 millimeters now. Okay. Now we have to put him inside the lever. To put him back in, to put the swing arm back into the lever, right? We need to put him inside the axle, inside the sleeve. Okay, so he's going to go in, let's say this is called the top, right, where the dial is. The axle is going to go on top, and then these holes need to align with these bushings, okay? So this is a little bit tricky because these bushings keep on wanting to come out. Now here we have to be careful. We're going to use our 2mm. Just try not to screw him in or out, okay? Because we know that now we are at the right length. Any movement of the rod by turning it with the 2mm Allen will actually move the length or change the distance, the length of the rod, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take him and we're going to pop him in. Is he in? Nope. Okay. Oh man, it just popped out. There we go. So now you pop him in, you're going to feel a pop, like you're going to feel like a snap when he goes in. All right. And now we just need to make sure that the holes align over here, okay, which they do. So we're going to take our pin and we're going to try and fit it through. There we go. That's one side. And that's the other side. So we got our pin in. All right. Now, we're going to grab our little bolt. And what we can do, or will do, is put a little bit of Loctite on him. And he was a T8. Just put a little bit of blue. You don't need much. Ooh, too much. Okay, grab our T8. There we go. And we're going to put him in that hole at the bottom over here on this side, okay? He does nothing more than grip onto that pin we just put in order to hold everything in place. So screw him down finger tight. Literally 1 or 2 Newton meters, just finger tight, just like that. You don't have to go crazy, does not need too much force. All right, now that portion of the assembly is done. All that's left is the lever and the reservoir. Next we put on the lever. Let's prep the bolts first with just a little bit of Loctite, just so we could have them ready, so we don't have to worry about it after. All right, so just a little bit. Oh, too much. Way, way, way too much. I don't know why I'm having trouble with that today. Let's share them. There we go. So we got a little bit of Loctite. We need our T10, okay? So we have a spring over here. We have the lever here, right? The handle. Well, not the handle, but this mechanism here. Forgot the name of it, right? So we want the spring to sit on top of this ledge here, just like that. And the whole goal is have this part here sit behind this bearing, the spring sit on top, and line up the holes in order to put in our screws, just like that. Oop, I just had it and I lost it. Oop, nearly had it. There we go. There we go. Now I got it. So we're going to take our 1 screw, put them in. Might have to jiggle them in there. Again, T10. And there we go. Come on. All right. It's going in. I think he is going in. Yes, he is going in. That's one side. Let's do the other side. I have to fiddle with the handle a bit to get him in there. And he is in. Now, again, finger tight. You don't have to go too crazy. Not too tight. Just finger tight on this, on each one. Loctite will do its job, right? And that's it. Boom. As for the reservoir, we take this guy and we put him in, just like that. All right. Now, first, remember we had the bearing, that ball, and the spring. We're going to take the ball first, and we're going to pop it in this hole, the hole closest to the mount on the handle. Okay. We're just going to pop it in just like that, and then we're going to take the screw and put them on top. Then we're going to take, the spring, and put them on top and sink them in. Then we take our screw, and again with our T10, screw this guy down. Finger tight. Does not need to be too hard, literally 1 or 2 Newton meters, somewhere in there. Okay, and then we take our second screw and we put them in. Done. Finger tight. Okay, next we attach our hose back onto the handle. To put the hose back on, now technically I should be doing this on the bike because there is a shape to the hose now that it's been sitting on the bike, right? Based on how the caliper rests and how the hose is routed. And I want to keep that same shape most I can, so I'll probably have to redo it when I get on the bike, but just to show you guys, okay? So we take our olive, we put it inside, put it in all the way, and then we screw in this while holding this cable, pushing the cable inwards, screw this bolt inwards, or screw it in, I should say. All right. Remember to keep on pushing the cable inwards. Let me move this guy out of here. All right. Now, we're going to take our 8mm and just screw them in or tighten them, right? And then we could take our 8mm crow's foot with our torque wrench, 8 Newton meters. Okay. We want to know that he's at least 8 Newton meters. There we go. Which is basically hand tight, right? So, so if you're doing by hand, just hand tight like that. Like right now, I can't even put him down anymore. So we know that he is in. And then we take our cap and we put him back on. Grab a little bit of alcohol. Clean off any that fluid on the outside. Oh, all that noise. All right. And this guy is ready to be put back on the bike. And there you go, guys. That is an explanation on how contact point adjustment works, what it does, what it looks like in the inside. Not that complex, very similar to Free Stroke from Shimano, but this is, in my opinion, a bit of a better system. One, it gives you more stroke capability. Two, you don't have to readjust anything. You just set up your handle via the handle adjuster here to the distance that you like, and then you just play with your contact point adjustment and find that sweet spot for you, right? Whatever you find the most comfortable. I mean, do you want immediate pressure or quick pressure, or do you want less pressure and a little bit more lever distance before you get, you know, a hard bite onto your rotors? Okay, again, there's advantages for either one. So hopefully this explains it well for you. From this point on, this would need to get bled. I'm not doing a bleed in this video because I've already done a bleed for actually a Guide Ultimate. There should be a video out there, all right, on my channel. So guys, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you dislike the video, please give it 2 thumbs down. Subscribe so you could get more, so you can see more videos. Click the bell button, bing, 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 so you could be notified when new videos get released. All right, and there will be more videos to come. Actually, quite a few. So hope all is well with everybody, and we will be talking to you soon. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.